You don't have to go to the movies to relive what was perhaps the most shameful episode in television history. Tonight, we're going to show you the real thing, a scandal that had all of America watching and that changed forever what you see on television. Here now is the story of the real quiz show and the man who finally came clean.
I'm great, pretending.
The year was 1956. It was a time of assumed innocence, trust, and honesty. America sat transfixed around its newest form of entertainment. And what Americans watched most weren't talk shows, they were quiz shows. One of the biggest was 21. But not from the very beginning. The first show was a flop.
I'm sorry, Tishan. I'm sorry you don't score, and that puts you right back to zero. What are we going to do with these two fellas? This is supposed to be a quiz show. It's turning out to be the greatest comedy show on the air.
21 co-producer Dan Enright was called the next morning by the sponsor, who threatened to cancel the show unless it became more entertaining. And he says it was at that moment producers decided to fix the show. For 6 weeks, 29-year-old Herb Stemple, supplied with the answers by producers, was the champ.
I'll stop. Then you win.
Stemple was coached by producers not only in what to answer, but how to act. He later explained Enright's form of method acting.
This is done, according to Mr. Enright, as follows. Rather than wiping, you pat. Also, the heavy breathing and the sighing is accomplished such as...
Over the course of Stemple's reign as champion, his winnings climbed to $69,500. But the show's ratings eventually fell. He was ordered to lose to a contestant the producers thought more appealing.
Are you related in any way to Mark Van Doren, up at Columbia University, the famous writer?
Yes, I am. He's my father.
He is your father?
Yeah.
Well, the name Van Doren is a very well-known name. You're related to any of the other well-known Van Dorens?
Well, Dorothy Van Doren, the novelist and author of the recent The Country Wife, is my mother.
Mm-hmm.
And Carl Van Doren, the biographer of Benjamin Franklin, the historian, is my uncle.
Well, you've got every reason in the world to be mighty proud of your name and your family.
Charles Van Doren, a charming 30-year-old professor, catapulted to fame on his 14-week stint on the show and won $129,000. He received more than 20,000 letters and even appeared on the cover of Time magazine. He became an educational role model for America.
Did he behead Catherine Howard?
He did. You've got 18 points.
Van Doren was also fed the answers in advance. A very bitter Stemple, no longer in the spotlight, and other contestants leveled charges of fraud, which led to a grand jury hearing into the allegations. Over 150 witnesses testified under oath. 2/3 of them lied. The quiz shows were canceled like dominoes, ending an era. Ultimately, a congressional hearing was held, and Charles Van Doren, the fallen hero, the still proud but now chastened aristocrat, finally told Congress the truth. Cameras were barred during his testimony, but let's listen now to a riveting moment of public shame that America heard when Charles Van Doren emerged from the congressional hearing room.
I didn't want to lie anymore. I never wanted to lie again, and I hope I never will. But I couldn't yet tell the truth. And my wife and I went up into New England, and I drove aimlessly around from town to town, trying to reach some kind of peace with myself, trying to come to some conclusion. And I couldn't find it yet, but I was getting closer and closer to it. My father had been saying to me, tell the truth. He didn't know what it was. I don't think he really cared what it was. It was just something that he knew was the right thing to do. Other people had said the same thing to me. But what really swung me over the line, what really tipped the scales, was a letter that I got from a woman who'd seen me on Today. Her letter was very intelligent and it moved me very much. And in it she said, you must, in order to live with yourself, tell the truth. That's the only way a man can live, with the truth. Well, as I say, I'd kind of known this before, but I'd never been able to face it completely. Suddenly, reading her letter was all very clear. And I went to bed that night, and I couldn't sleep all night. But it was the first happy night that I'd spent for nearly 3 years.
The next morning, he called his lawyer and told him he wanted to tell the whole story, to hold nothing back. His lawyer had been worried about Van Doren's health and even his sanity.
And he paused a long time. He was silent for a long time. Then he said, "God bless you." Chairman Harris of this committee said the same thing this morning. And it moved me so much that all I can say is I hope I deserve it.
Charles Van Doren pleaded guilty and was convicted of perjuring himself in front of a grand jury. He received a suspended sentence. He's written or edited more than 50 books and today lives in retirement in Connecticut. He has not spoken publicly about his involvement in the quiz show scandal since 1959.